Emma first heard it while she was making tea. The morning had already started off wrong. She'd woken up sluggish, reluctant to leave the warmth of her bed, and reached across the mattress instinctively. Cold sheets. Empty space. Oliver had already left for work, as he always did before she was awake. She sighed and hit snooze on her alarm again, allowing herself a few more minutes to be alone in her self-pity. By the time she finally dragged herself out of bed, the apartment felt unusually cold. The heater was off, as expected. Oliver liked to wait until it was unbearably freezing before turning it on. Typical. She shivered as she padded into the kitchen, rubbing her arms to generate some warmth. A hot cup of tea would fix everything, or at least it might make her feel less dead inside. As she went through the routine, filling the kettle, setting it on the stove, and grabbing a mug, she became aware of a noise. It was faint, just beneath the hum of the refrigerator, like a whispering static crawling along the edge of her hearing. Emma frowned. Maybe the TV had been left on overnight. She reached for the tea bags. The sound grew louder. She turned on the burner. The whispering shifted, as if something was adjusting to her presence. Emma hesitated, turning to glance over her shoulder. The apartment was empty, just as she'd left it. The front door was locked. The curtains were drawn. She was alone. But the whispering persisted. By the time she sat down at her desk, the tea untouched beside her, she had mostly convinced herself it had been her imagination. Maybe the wind outside, or a neighbor's TV muffled through the walls. It was nothing. She had work to do. She put in her earbuds, let the music wash over her, and focused on the screen. Emails, spreadsheets, data entry. It was repetitive, comforting in its monotony. Numbers had rules, unlike the unpredictable static that had invaded her morning. Then her screen flickered. Just for a second. A blink of distortion, a split-second blackout before the monitor returned to normal. Emma frowned, removing one earbud. The whispering was there, louder now, no longer static, but something shifting. A slow, deliberate movement, like feet sliding across carpet. Her stomach twisted. Her hands froze on the keyboard. Something was behind her. The moment stretched unbearably long before she finally forced herself to turn around. Her office door was open, the hallway beyond it empty, but the whispering hadn't stopped. It curled around her, slithering through the silence. She squeezed her eyes shut. It's not real. It's stress, exhaustion. It's nothing. The sound faded. By lunchtime, she had almost convinced herself it had never been there at all. Still, when she made her way to the kitchen, she couldn't shake the unease lingering in her chest. The kettle was still on the stove, the tea in her mug, long gone cold. She dumped it into the sink and turned to open the fridge. The whispering returned. Louder. Closer. Emma's breath hitched. She turned slowly, heart pounding. The apartment was silent. The office door was still open, and the living room was exactly as she'd left it. But something was different. The air felt thick, charged, as if someone had just exhaled near her ear. The kettle screeched as the burner flared to life. Emma yelped, jumping back. The knob was already turned, the flame flickering blue beneath the metal. She hadn't touched it. She slammed the knob back to off. Her hands were shaking. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe she had bumped it. Maybe. A whisper brushed against her ear. Emma spun, a breath away from screaming, but there was nothing there. Her breath came out in panic gasps as she backed away from the kitchen, retreating toward the office. The whispering followed, trailing behind her like a shadow. It wasn't in the kitchen anymore. It was in the apartment. It was in the walls. She shut herself in the office, locked the door, and pressed her back against it, her mind racing. Could she call Oliver? What would she even say? "Hey, babe, I think I'm being haunted by a sentient radio frequency." No. No, he'd just worry. He'd think she was losing it. Maybe she was losing it. But then something scraped against the door, a slow, deliberate movement, like nails dragging across wood. Emma choked on a breath. The whispering was right outside. Her phone vibrated violently in her lap, making her jolt. She fumbled for it, nearly dropping it in her panic. Oliver. She answered on the first ring. "Oliver!" she gasped, pressing the phone to her ear. "Oh, thank God! There's something—" "Emma?" His voice was sharp with concern. "Emma, are you okay?" The whispering was getting louder. It wasn't outside the office anymore. It was in the room. Emma pressed her free hand to her mouth, barely holding in a sob. The sound filled her ears, pressing against her skull, reverberating in her bones. "Emma?" Oliver's voice came through the receiver. "Baby, I need you to breathe, okay? Just breathe." She tried, but the air felt thick, suffocating. "Listen," Oliver said, his voice steady. "You're safe. It's not real. You're having an episode." Emma blinked. "What?" "The psychiatrist mentioned this, remember? Lowering your dose could cause auditory hallucinations. I should have checked in sooner." "Baby, you're okay. It's just your brain misfiring." It took a few seconds for his words to sink in. Emma sucked in a shaky breath. The whispering was still there, but the terror was slipping away, replaced with something else. Shame, embarrassment. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I thought I was losing my mind." Oliver let out a relieved chuckle. "No, babe. Well, maybe a little. But it's not your fault. Let's get you back on the right dose, okay? I'm coming home." Emma nodded, wiping at her eyes. "Okay." She sat there for a while after hanging up, listening. The whispering was still there, lurking at the edge of her hearing. But now she knew what it was. A trick. A false echo from her own mind. A hallucination couldn't hurt her. She stood up on unsteady legs, unlocked the office door, and stepped into the living room. The whispering followed. Emma ignored it,